Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Good afternoon, and welcome everybody in our session. I would like to welcome every single one of you to our Sharia aligned portfolio, balancing ethics and risk. Today, we're going to talk about the Islamic finance move into more complex and multipolar world, questioning the emerge around. I am today fortunate and lucky to meet the expert matters and the leader in this sector. So today we're gonna talk about so many things around Sharia compliance. I would like to start with Mr. Iqbal. I am sure many of the guests here, they know about Islamic finance and Sharia, but for the people who doesn't know about it, can you briefly explain what is Sharia compliance? At the same time, risk and opportunity most of the investors they are facing, especially we are living in very fragmented, multipolar world.
Thank you very much, Mariam. So there is a Quranic word called yanfa'un nas, that which is good for mankind. To me, the sectoral definition of Islamic finance is anything which makes the world a better place for all is Sharia compliant. How we structure it, how we package it, how we present it to our Sharia boards is not the essence of the transaction. It is the impact. It's also that we are living in a world which is multipolar, which is shifting between deglobalization, between them and us. Islamic finance is about putting money into the productive, real economy. It is about connecting the financial economy with the real economy. And in a world where there is so much of them and us, Islamic finance is actually all about us, humanity as a whole. Islamic finance is not a subset of the global financial system. It is actually a proposition which is there to bring everyone together to make this world a better place for all. Whether it is in venture capital, or whether it is in SMEs, or whether it is in private equity infrastructure, in all those areas, the fundamental question which is Sharia asks is value being created? Is this transaction making this world a better place for all? So, from that perspective, that's the broad definition. What was the second part of the question?
The risk and opportunities for the agent in fragmental, multipolar we are living at the moment.
I think from a GCC perspective, today we have a very unique opportunity. As the world shifts from unipolar to multipolar, as the world gets more deglobalized and fragmented, we are very fortunate in GCC to have visionary leadership, to have economic stability, political stability, continuity. These are the founding pillars. And in my view, when we started Islamic finance, it used to be $200 billion industry, and we used to talk about it. It is going at 15-20% per annum. But today, it is a $3 trillion industry. It is going very, very fast. But the essence of Islamic finance is its authenticity and the impact which it has. And that is the measurement. And there are huge opportunities. And Islamic finance has always talked about the role of government is capitalism with a moral perspective. Government as a referee, not as a player. And when government plays, it plays with the private sector, not against the private sector. Private sector is the ultimate way to have a competitive economy. Islamic finance is also about making sure that the asset management model should be prioritized. The banking model will always be Sharia compliant, it will never be Sharia based because the BIS regulations, the risk weightage guidance makes it almost impossible to have risk reward sharing, which you talked about.
Yes.
So, asset management offers us the opportunity, government as allocators of capital for VC, for technology, for SMEs, for private equity, for infrastructure, and then choosing the best asset manager for each asset class to have a maximum impact. This is a new way of thinking, and I believe this will bring stability and growth to our markets.
Thank you so much. Building on that, I would
Well
like to
said.
ask Mr. Muhammad, because both Islamic finance and ESG often relies on screening, okay? And many criticize that the Islamic, this approach is basically avoiding the haram instead of bringing great values or more economical to the investors. So how should Islamic private equity evolve beyond screaming, okay, and becoming very genuine agent to the positive change?
Yes, I actually, Brother Iqbal already set the scene.
Yes.
That Sharia or Islamic law is to promote good. So we actually have to enhance the definition of Sharia law in terms of banking, not just focus on prohibitions. And we have inspiration from people like Imam al-Ghazali from the 12th century. He said that Islamic law is about preserving religion, life, property, human dignity, intellect, etc. And another scholar, Ibn Ashur from the 20th century, said that Islamic law is about enhancing society, protecting human dignity, family values, equality, etc. So if we focus on things like this, we'll find that these values fit in very nicely with ESG investing that major private equity firms have been doing. So just to give you an example, TPG has raised more than $18 billion through a RISE fund concept that they've been using. KKR has launched a global impact fund, 2.8 billion. So just to give you an example, TPG has invested in a company called Dodla in India. It's a dairy company. And basically, what the company does, it provides feedstock, veterinary services to small farmers who maybe are looking after cows. And it gives access to banking systems so that the farmers get paid a fair price for the milk, for example, and they're sure that they're going to receive the payment, etc. So Dodla supports 250,000 farmers in hundreds of villages in India. So TPG is just a good example where you make good returns, plus you have a social impact, you do some social good. And I think that's a good model for us to follow. For an example from our capital zone example in UAE, we've invested in a company called Dataflow.
Okay.
And one problem we have in this region, a lot of doctors, engineers, nurses, they come from all over the world, and we don't know what type of qualification that they have. They have a certificate, but is this valid or not? So Dataflow basically verifies, it's called primary verification services. It verifies the qualification of professionals, especially, who come to the UAE. So inshallah, this investment will be a good financial investment for our capita, but it will also provide some other social benefits to the UAE. So I think that's just an example of the type of investment that we should be making.
I'm sure you guys are leading the changes and promoting the Islamic finance and ESG. Let me go to Mr. Barisma, and you know we are operating around very fast-growing industry. So where do you see the most meaningful growth within the Islamic finance product landscape?
Yeah, I think from our perspective, where we see the growth is really the opportunity for equal access, as we were talking about earlier. So on Monday, we announced under the leadership of His Excellency Chairman Al-Zabi, the Majada ecosystem here in ADGM. And really the vision of Majada is to bring and create the world's first centralized, scalable, and standardized capital markets ecosystem anywhere in the world. And with the lens that we look through from the Majada initiative, it's a focus on all assets, but really to start, it's around structured products and fixed income. And if you look at these markets, number one, they're fragmented all around the world when you look at conventional and Sharia compliant products. Number two, they're very expensive. And number three is they're inaccessible because of a lot of the costs, the minimums are so high, most people can't afford to even buy these products, especially in structured products. And ultimately, I think it was said earlier, but we try to view through the Majada initiative, and my company, Halo, that I founded, is powering the technology of this ecosystem. But we need to look through it through the lens of conscious capitalists, is what I always like to say. I'm a conscious capitalist, and it's about equal opportunity. So when you look in the structured product world, yes, are there Sharia compliant structured products that exist? Yes, there are. There's a few banks that offer them. I find it very ironic that some of those banks offer Sharia compliant products linked to the S&P 500, which is not Sharia compliant. But there's an additional 200 to 300 basis points in fees just because the wrapper is Sharia compliant. There might be a variety of reasons why that is, but I don't believe that that's fair. Why, based on someone's faith, should you pay another 300 basis points in fees? And so the vision of Majada is to utilize technology and a standardized framework here within ADGM to be able to solve these challenges, make the fees a lot more palatable for people to ultimately take within their products, and more importantly, make these products accessible to investors of all faiths and investors of all wallet sizes. So with this standardized Sharia framework that we're developing right here in the ADGM, with tokenization and with technology, ultimately, we will all have an equal opportunity to Sharia compliant structured products, fixed income, in a transparent, efficient, and scalable way.
Very interesting. I really would like to ask Mr. Iqbal, what would you tell the Islamic asset manager to move from compliance lens to build portfolio which is bring long-term value to the client?
Well, I think Islamic asset managers all across the world are trying their best to get authenticity, transparency, better governance into their asset management platforms. When you invest into a portfolio company, you cannot have a better governance than what you have in your own company as an asset manager. If you have transparency, if you have high impact platforms, and you also have the linkages with ESG and CSR. So at Fajr Capital, we have a foundation in which we give 10% of our management fees and 10% of our carry. And what do we do with it is to, again, work to make this world a better place for all. So when we have integrity, we have competence. Without integrity, there cannot be any competence. In the history of Islam, when the Prophet was migrating from Mecca to Medina, he asked his companion, who is the best navigator? So he said, amongst us is Hamza, your uncle. But he said, no, who is the best? He said, this person is not a Muslim. And he said, is he the best? He said, yes, he is the best. So Abu Bakr said, but how can we trust him? So Rasulullah said, if he is the best, then he would have integrity. Nobody becomes the best without integrity. So I think asset managers are well advised to make sure that in their platforms and in their portfolio companies, they have authenticity, integrity, meritocracy, good governance, and high impact, i.e. that when you become successful, nobody is going to take all the money which we have with us. We give back. And the give back is part of the way you create a more equitable and a better world.
I agree with you. Actually, Islamic finances became universal now. It's no longer focused on Islamic countries or religious people, because we started to see a lot of commercial banks now, they're introducing Islamic products, although because it has a universal meaning. And it has an impact investment, which is, take me back to Mr. Muhammad. And, impact investment has deployed tools like Catalyst Capital, Patient, Risk Tolerance Capital. How should Islamic private equity engage in those catalytic opportunities?
Yeah, Mariam, so you mentioned catalyst investing. Basically, this is investors who are willing to accept a lower return, maybe to invest for a longer period. So For example, mostly we invest for 3 to 5 years. Those investors are willing to accept investing for like 10 to 12 years, for example. And just to give you one example from my own country, Bangladesh, there's an institution called BRAC. It started off as a micro lender, has 6 to 7 million customers in Bangladesh, and now it's spread to other countries in Africa and Asia. And the way that they look at or assess their returns is not just financial. So for example, 90% of the customers are women. So women empowerment, we know that women are treated like second-class citizens in many countries. So that target is to uplift the women in that society. Look at financial resilience. I was in a village in Bangladesh, and there's a river, and I suddenly see a big boat come, and there's a big structure on the boat. So I asked the people, what is this? They said it's a mobile school for children, because children from this village can't go to a proper school. So they brought the school to the village. Wow. So I think in Islamic finance, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. Maybe we can partner with BRAC. They're not Sharia compliant, but we can very easily structure microfinance in a Sharia compliant manner. And we should look at those. Maybe the sovereign investors are willing to take a lower return, invest for a longer period, or the development banks. The first session talked about that from Kazakhstan. So I'd encourage like Mubadala, PIF in our region, the big sovereign wealth funds, to look at these catalysts or impact investing, especially in less developed countries.
Yeah, I think before people thought just the oil and gas companies should contribute to the society, which is no longer the case. I think it's a general responsibility to have an impact and return to the society, which is everybody plays really good role from that. So since we are living in very evolving and changing, and we live in very innovative time where we see technology and we see artificial intelligence, I really would like to ask you, Barisma, how can technology reshape and expand Islamic finance, and does that enable more purposeful allocation within the financial?
Well, I think technology and AI is changing everything. As we talked about earlier, I run a global technology company, both for conventional products and now with a specific lens on Sharia product through Chairman Al-Zabi's Majada initiative. And when you look at AI, I think it's very interesting in general, and this doesn't matter between conventional and Sharia, but just what it does to the human population. And there's a lot of people who are worried about the displacement of jobs. And I would remind people that there was a recent report that was done, I think, by KPMG, that 90% of its survey participants said that they actually lose money when they're implementing AI, that they have not seen any ROI. So I encourage my team to put the ROI in AI as our little inside joke. But what we see with AI is it just allows us to be a lot more productive. And when we're a lot more productive, it allows us to be able to collect a lot more intelligence, provide better customer experience and user experience for our clients. And it also allows us to be a lot more scalable. So we're able to do more with our time, which I think is really, really powerful. I think we're in the very early stages of what AI is going to do to society. I do not think it's going to be as scary of what people say it's going to be. We adapt just as we did after Henry Ford's assembly line. But when you look at through the lens of Majada and Sharia compliance and technology, I think blockchain and smart contracts can play a really prolific role, at least from my view and my seat, of being able to standardize and scale and automate the manufacturing of these products. You talked earlier, and I totally agree with you, and I view the same thing in just the structured product world. We shouldn't look at, is it conventional if it's Sharia? We should be looking at what are good for our portfolios, what's good for the world, and what's ultimately required to be able to hit our retirement goals and our ethical values, which I really appreciate you guys talking about that. And those are a very fine line to balance, right? We need to be able to hit our retirement goals, but we also need to be able to hit and meet our ethical values. And you can do both, through investing. And so the way I view it are, what are the right investments for yourself? And more importantly, for the world, you always want to be doing something bigger than yourself, in my humble opinion. And then let's make it available in both a conventional wrapper and a Sharia wrapper. And you can do that in a really scalable way through smart contracts in blockchain. And that's a big thing that we're going to be focusing on with Majada. But it really starts with the standardization. So what we are doing with the Majada initiative is really bringing in the Abu Dhabi Inc. institutions to be able to create this framework and have a really collaborative approach in regards to that. So it really starts there with a standardized framework that we can then take and ultimately scale, not just within the UAE and not just within regionally, but ultimately globally. It's important to turn the hub of Islamic finance and make it here in Abu Dhabi.
Thank you so much. Of course, technology is one element, but giving Islamic finance is the fastest growing segment. What other capability we are expecting to build world-class Sharia asset portfolio?
I think the biggest thing is human talent. It will be very important to have graduate training program where graduates could become part of an Islamic financial institution. When I founded HSBC Amana, our first 60 graduates came from all kinds of different backgrounds. And all of them, without exception today, are CEOs, CIOs of very large institutions. So the first thing which you need is human talent. The second thing is to integrate with Sharia and be transparent with Sharia scholars and benefit from their wisdom, and the proactive engagement with Sharia scholars to guide us to how to make these products more authentic, more transparent, more impactful, in order to deliver the business model which is required today in a fragmented, in a broken world. The financial systems have got inherent systemic risks. And today I want to spend 1 minute on technology. Today, digitalization is taking away the biggest systemic risk, i.e. financial intermediation and the co-mingling with payment systems are being segregated and separated. This is the best thing which could have happened for both conventional and Islamic banking. As it happens, we will have much more stability in the banking system.
Yeah.
And diversification within it. Totally agree.
So I think we are running off time, so I'm going to have final thoughts to Mr. Mohammed.
Yeah. No, just to pick up on the previous questions, I think Islamic banking, we need to move away from what I call the Murabaha syndrome.
Yes.
Unfortunately, what we try to do, we try to imitate a conventional product, which isn't totally Sharia compliant. We put an SPV, we put a Murabaha in the middle, going back to the expression used, put a Sharia wrapper. Instead of trying to do that, going back to what Bada Iqbal said, we need to create real Islamic products. Yes. So for example, private credit has been booming in the last few years. And if you look at the Sharia compliant versions, you see there's a Sharia wrapper. And if you look at the underlying contracts, they're not that compliant. We really need to work hard to create authentic Islamic products. So for example, at our Capita, when we started 30 years ago, we did the first leveraged buyout transaction in a Sharia compliant manner in the US. At that time, equity investment is very Sharia compliant, but you couldn't get the leverage. We spent months and hundreds of thousands of dollars working with lawyers to come up with a sale and leaseback ijara structure. And that has become like the industry standard now. Everybody accepts that as a Sharia standard. So I think we need to work harder to make sure that we don't take the easy route with the Sharia wrapper, but to have authentic, real Sharia compliant products going forward.
Complementing what you mentioned, I believe technology and platform, how can we scale up the finance product and to be mainstream adopted globally?
Well, that's the beauty of what Majada is. It's the thread that connects the infrastructure that already exists in Abu Dhabi and in the UAE. We already have the ADGM, which already has issuance programs that you can utilize. We already have exchanges like ADX, which we can utilize. We already have banks and a CCP like AD Clear. All the pieces are already in place. We just need to bring them together through technology and ultimately through innovation to be able to make these products more transparent, more efficient, and more accessible. And I think that, in my humble opinion, that ADGM is the best place to be able to do that because it is flexible, it's credible, and it's innovative. And that's what's really powerful about what the chairman and ADGM have been doing here in a wide variety of different industries. And so ultimately, I think technology will be the driver of the next great wave of Sharia compliant adoption, in my respectful opinion.
I agree with you. I think we need to conclude, right? I believe we will see more transformation in the Sharia compliance and Islamic finance. And thank you so much to our speakers. And I really thank you for attending this session.
Thank you very much. Thank you.